Good morning. We're switching around again this morning. Got Steve over here on the technology stuff because that is definitely not going to be my spot. But let's begin this morning with prayer. So if you have requests or praises this morning that you'd like to share together before we begin.
Good morning, Luis Padilla here. I have three. There's always time for everything, right? Sometimes we request prayer. Sometimes we give praise for things happen by the grace of God. Spring break this week. We made it to half of the semester. After this week, it's only 8 weeks for me and for many others to graduating on May 3rd. Put this day in your calendar. May 3rd, Luis Padilla is walking and getting his master's of divinity degree. Great. Second thing, quick here. My dad is coming because of my graduation and for other things too. On April 9th. A friend of mine is going with me to get him at the airport in not the one here, but the one in north
Weird State or Charlottesville?
No, it's beyond TWI, what's the name of it? Yes, that's the one. So 3 hours from here. Then the third thing is, this is the biggest, most of my bills were paid this Thursday. Thank you. I'm grateful to be in this community and have you support us every morning, Tuesdays. Thank you. Anyone else?
We're going to pray for Ken too. He is a little under the weather. I don't know if you heard the stories from Ken just so far in the leadership of these last 3 weeks. The first week, the night before a skunk entered his house on Monday night, which, creates some havoc. And then last night, he got this crud this morning, I guess, really. And so is working on being cautious and not spreading it to the rest of us. But we will pray for your health as well. Well, let's join together in prayer. God, thank you. Thank you for the many ways that you have blessed us. We give you thanks for the praises and prayers that Luis has acknowledged this morning for the rest of the school year, for the chance to be at this point, for the gift that is in relation to really everything. His hard work and the support of others. We continue to give thanks and praise to you, and we continue to pray for you in the things that still are out ahead for him, for the things like the cost of his schooling, Lord. We both give thanks and continue to pray. We give thanks and continue to pray for his dad coming. That is both an opportunity, Lord, and a gift. And God, for Ken, we pray that you would give him health, that you would remove whatever it is that is giving him trouble this morning, Lord. We know that you are more than capable. We trust you to do your will. We ask, as your children, that you would heal him of whatever is going on. And God, I give thanks for each of these men, for their lives. I pray that we would honor you with all that we are. we would serve you, that we would bring glory to you. Help us to hear your voice this morning, Lord. Pray these things in your name, Jesus. We love you.
And I just want to let people know real quick, you know, when you get the email with the little buttons on it, you can click on the handout and so forth. I'm going to update that handout, and it will have the link to all these charts in it, okay? So today you'll be able to, after the meeting, you'll be able to access these exact charts that he's going to show today, all right? And then next week, we're starting the spring season, and Jason Rhodes Showalter is going to be leading us off on that. And you'll be receiving an email with a little flyer in it, and you'll have the whole schedule for the spring season at that time. Okay.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I woke up this morning with just this really deep-throated cough. And sure enough, I had gotten a text message from the schools about 2 days ago warning that whooping cough was going around. So I'm going to be really cautious. I'm not being antisocial or aloof. I'm not going to be a part of table discussions or things like that today. In fact, I'll probably just limit my exposure. So, and between the skunk and whooping cough this morning, I was also diagnosed with Lyme's disease during these last few weeks, so I do appreciate your prayers. I'm in the antibiotics. I'm taking the antibiotics. There's good hope for a full recovery, but it's one of those things that you do hope and pray for a full and good recovery. So I do welcome your prayers. I think I mentioned that last week, but we made it. Not with the handouts, unfortunately, but we did make it, and I'm excited to get to share with you guys this third and final sort of part of the series on spiritual formation of the next generation in the digital age. Just as a reminder, began 2 weeks ago with a fairly heavy naming of the problem. For folks, a lot of folks are probably already aware, but for folks who haven't been, we are in a place of a real crisis of adolescent mental health right now. I already showed you the stats. They're in the first set, so I'm not going to go through those again, but in a lot of ways there is this fiery furnace threat up to the next generation, and particularly around social isolation. Last week, I began to hopefully cast some vision through the story of adolescent Jesus in the temple, of what is at the heart and the desire of the adolescent quest. And in that, I highlighted that you can see these three movements in the story of young Jesus in the temple, where he begins from his childhood home. He goes off on a real-life adventure far from his home, and he gives his parents the slip for 3 days and goes to Jerusalem. And it's there, while he's in the temple, when his parents come back to them and they say, why would you do this to us, right? And he says to them, didn't you know that I would be in my Father's house? And part of what I'm wanting to argue is that at the heart of the adolescent quest is this journey to find belonging, identity, and purpose. And that Jesus finds that in the heart of his community at the temple, which is also where, right, the promise of God's presence was, right? They had that eternal flame at the heart of the temple. And so Jesus, as an adolescent, as he's awakening to his spiritual, his social realities, like any other adolescent before him, he's gone on this adventure, and it's one to discover, where does he belong? Who is he, and what is his purpose in the world? And I highlighted this from Ronald Rolheiser, which I think is worth saying again, which is the fiery energies that heat up our body and our emotions when we are young, if not properly initiated and directed to genuine life-giving outlets, are dangerous inside a young person. In the end, whether we know it or not, all of these struggles are ultimately about one thing: finding our way back home. I want to highlight this word initiated because I think today's question is, what does it look like for the church to initiate the next generation into a good adventure? So, because this adolescent quest, as mentioned, is being co-opted right now, right? Our young people's experience of where they take these questions of belonging, identity, and purpose look very little like Jesus' experience in the temple today. And they look a lot more like this young person's experience. And there's good studies. Actually, a really important study, if you want to keep up with this stuff, just came out from Common Sense Media. It's called Talk, Trust, and Trade-Offs, and it's about the rise of AI companions. And in that finding, and AI companions haven't been around for very long, just to be clear, AI chatbots are different than companions. Companions are designed to be relational. They remember who you are, what you like, your particulars, and they engage with you on a relational level, oftentimes a romantic level. This recent study, they haven't been around that long, but this recent study's found that 1/3 of adolescents today would prefer to go to an AI companion, again, not a chatbot, but a companion, with like the important questions about their life, rather than an adult. So 1/3 right now. So this is what the adolescent quest is how the adolescent quest is currently being co-opted. So what are the voices of authority that are guiding today's adolescent quest? And I want to talk about these voices of authority as a part of this. And to do that, we're going to look at another story that, interestingly, follows the exact same pattern as the story of young Jesus in the temple. And it also has to do with a young person, presumably the prodigal son would have been an adolescent, maybe a late adolescent. So would someone be willing to read chapter 15 of Luke, verse 11 through 32? I know it's a very familiar story, but if someone would be willing, can I get a volunteer just to raise your hand? Thank you. And as we read it, David reads it, look for these same patterns of childhood at home, adventure far from home, and discovering true home.
And he said, a certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate that falls to me. And he divided his wealth between them. And not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey into a distant country. And there he squandered his estate with loose living. Now, when he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began to be in need. And he went and attached himself to one of the citizens of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he was longing to fill his stomach with the pods that the swine were eating, and no one was giving anything to him. And when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have more than enough bread, but I'm dying here with hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired men. And he got up and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion for him, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out the best robe, put it on. Put a ring on his hand, and sandals on his feet, and bring the fattened calf, kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. And they began to be merry. Now his older son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. And he summoned one of the servants and began inquiring what these things might be. And he said to him, your brother is come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he became angry, and was not willing to go in. And his father came out and began entreating him. But he answered and said to his father, look, for so many years I've been serving you, and I have never neglected a command of yours. Yet you've never given me a kid, so that I might be merry with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your wealth with harlots, you killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, My child, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to be merry and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead, and has begun to live, and was lost, and has been found.
Amen. Thanks, David. Great reading. I just want to highlight that the tension in this story really revolves around identity, belonging, and purpose, right? Around sonship. The prodigal is decided that he's not worthy of being what? Of being a son. And so he's offering himself back as a slave. And then the tension with the older brother, you know, it says that he's unwilling to be, he's outside the home, and he's unwilling to enter into the party, right? And we don't know if he comes, right? It's left unresolved whether the older son joins the party in the house. But it's all about this being welcomed home in our sonship. And so in this story we have an example of the voice of authority, as I highlighted for young Jesus. As he turned 12 is the first time, even though this was a yearly custom, that he didn't just follow on the coattails of his parents back home, but a voice was calling to him from outside of the childhood home. And this is a profound part of the reality of adolescence, is that something begins to beckon us from outside of the home. And for the prodigal, these are not good whatever voice it is that's beckoning him into loose living, right? It's not a good voice of authority. But regardless, this is a profound time in which voices of authority from outside the home will begin to speak to the next generation. In both of these stories we see this. And so here's the challenge that I want to lay out for us, is that if the church does not invite the next generation into a good adventure, the culture will invite them into a bad one.
Wow.
So what does it look like for us to invite the next generation into a good adventure? I want to share a little bit more personally today, because the prodigal story isn't my story. I'm sort of an inversion of the prodigal story. I'm sort of like a white sheep within my family. And that's because the generation above me had plenty of their own prodigal journeys. And so I'm going to share just briefly about my own dad's. So this is a picture of me and my dad when I was two years old. Baseball was a big part of our life. My dad and mom split. I'll just do it in pictures. Are folks familiar with the genogram? Just so that I know how much to explain. I'm not going to explain it very much. Here's a typical genogram, okay? This is the one that I grew up with. So every red slash is a divorce or a separation. So I grew up, my dad was married 3 times. He had 5 children with 4 different women. My mom was married twice. She had 5 children with 3 different men. Not all of them were marriages. One of them was an affair that my dad had while he was engaged to my mother. I grew up with a brother who is 6 months older than me my whole life. And he had a different mother than me. And at one point, because he got kicked out of school, he came back to school after me. So I had a half-brother who was 6 months older than me, but was a grade younger than me, my senior year of high school. Why I'm saying all of this is to say that my dad had voices of authority calling to him from the sexual revolution in the 70s in Vancouver. And he dove full into it. And he really embraced the ethos and the ideals and the philosophy behind it. And he would get married, but that wasn't necessarily a covenantal reality for him. He wanted sort of the image of stability, he wanted to have that projection, but he wasn't interested in being constrained. One of my earliest childhood memories, this is a true story, is finding a photo of my dad with multiple topless women around him. I think it was some sort of, I don't know what it was. But anyway, so that's what I grew up around, okay? And the devastation that this wreaked on our family's lives is what I grew up in. I grew up in the aftermath of his embrace of the sexual revolution. I have 4 half-brothers, 4 half-sisters. And so when I discovered the church as a teenager, it was like springs of water in a desert in terms of just like this place of extended family, of stability, of a vision for the good life. And that's part of my story. So my dad was tempted into a bad adventure, and the voices of authority that called to him from into that bad adventure led to really profound brokenness that obviously I'm not going to spend too much time getting into. So as a teenager, when I'm 16 years old, this is the kind of the crux of the matter. My mom shared with me the extent of this. I grew up obviously not really knowing why my parents had been divorced and this and that. And when I was 16 years old, one night, she probably had had one or two too many shares, and she decided to share kind of the full story of it. And she shared about my father's affairs, some physical violence that was a part of that. And I remember going out into the back porch of our trailer, and the thing that was welling up in me more than anything in the world was, I will never be like that man, right? Like that was the cry of my soul. And in that moment, though, instead of making that vow against my earthly father, by God's grace, I had come into the church through a youth group. I'd been baptized. I was in a rough place at that point in my walk, but it was still a part of me. I experienced an invitation from the Spirit of God, which was that God himself could be my father, right? And that I was being invited to see God as my father because my earthly one wasn't one that I could look up to. And that sent me on my journey to discover new voices of authority. But that voice in that moment was the one that anchored me and started to invite me into a good adventure. One where my Heavenly Father's goodness could be what defined what I could be aiming at and what I could hope to be like, right? Because that was it. I don't want to be like that man. We're all becoming like something that we've beheld, right? So what are we beholding? Because that is what we're going to become. This is a photo of my first real big adventure when, after high school, I worked for a year, and then I headed to Australia for Youth with a Mission. And if you look real close, the cute redhead with her head leaning like this was Emily, and who I'm now married to and have 4 kids with. And so this is the beginning of my invitation to a good adventure. So again, these are the questions that I want us to be wrestling with. We'll come back to them for discussion. But what voices of authority are streaming into the hearts and minds of the next generation today? What kind of an adventure is digital Babylon inviting the next generation into? When I say digital Babylon, I'm not referring to all of technology, right? Not anti-tech or anti-foolishness. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully that's clear. I'm always a little nervous people think that I'm super anti-tech. Number 3, how can the church invite the next generation into a better adventure than the one that the culture is offering us? My dad died of cancer 4 years ago. I got to visit him numerous times over the last months of his life, and I don't want to spend too much time on this story, except for to say that later in my life, my dad became a believer, and I had the extraordinary opportunity as a young man in my mid-20s to at our church, be invited to baptize my own father. Because he recognized that he had been hoodwinked. In the last months of his life, I met with him twice, and one time we spent multiple evenings together, and he shared with me just how much regret he lived with. And he died alone. He was alone the last 15 years of his life. And he said, I just sit in my recliner and I think about the things that I did to other people, and I just weep, you know? So how can the church invite the next generation to a better adventure than the one that the culture is offering?
Amen.
So I'm not going to dive too much into this, but this is a really important article for people who are wanting to know a little bit about what are these voices that are calling out. And just a reminder of this one part of AI, and this is just a thought experiment given to AI. You can prompt AI to say different things, but this was what it came up with. It came with a 7-point plan to ruin the next generation and make it dependent on, and so it's called the Devil's Plan to Ruin a Generation. We went through it the first day a little bit, but just as a reminder that one of the steps was undermine trust across generations. Sow suspicion between parents and children, teachers and students, elders and youth. If every authority figure is portrayed as untrustworthy or obsolete, the next generation grows rootless, cut off from inherited wisdom and forced to navigate the world with only the guidance of peers and algorithms. So, in this moment, this is a beautiful painting by Rembrandt. Sorry, I keep thinking of that. In this moment, right, the identity, the belonging, the purpose of the prodigal is in question. And he comes back prepared to present himself as a slave. And it's his father's words to him, "My son was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found." And then it says, "So the party began," which I love. I think there's something poetic about that. So the party began. The party begins once we're in that place where a good voice of authority invites us into a good adventure, and then also, in this instance, welcomes us back home from a bad one. And so, how can we shepherd? Obviously, how can we shepherd the next generation to a place where they're encountering the Word of God, where they're encountering the voice of the Good Shepherd, the voice of the Good Father who's welcoming them home? And so, because if we don't, and part of this, I just want to highlight just the intergenerational nature of this. We can take that for granted. It's sort of the water that we swim in. We live in these different, obviously, but it's essential here for this authority of the older generation over the younger generation. And to highlight that, I just want to show what this painting looks like if you remove the Good Father from it. Just take a moment and look at the contrast those. Oh, I don't know if we could cut off the lights or not, but can people see it okay?
Yeah.
When there is no good voice of authority, then we're just in this, right? Just what that said, we're left to the judgments, the opinions, the fads of our peers. And in this case, today, also of our algorithms, right? And if there's anything that marks the digital revolution, it is the breakdown of the passing on of wisdom from one generation to another, right? I think we can all recognize and feel this, that what is the growing understanding of what's going on is coming, horizontally instead of being passed down, right, through different fads and whatnot. So obviously, today it looks a little bit more like this. Sorry, this is me being silly, but it's a little bit. It's been digitized. The algorithms play a bigger role in it. But unless we create spaces for intergenerational wisdom to be exchanged, this is the sort of fate that we're offering the next generation. So, if the church does not invite the next generation into a good adventure, the culture will invite them into a bad one. I want to hear, I've talked quite a bit about big tech and how they're colonizing the social and spiritual lives of the next generation, because we now live in an attention economy. So the most valuable resource in the world today, and this is like true, The Economist talks about this, I'm not just a preacher saying this because it's convenient. The number one resource today isn't oil, and it's not the rare earth minerals in our phones, it's our attention, okay? There's a whole reason why that is, but it is the case. And so, I've talked a lot about how big tech companies are doing this. There's a new documentary called Never Look Up. That's all about this, about the design in our, all this. But it's too easy, right, to be like, oh, those guys out there are doing this to us or whatever. This book, Faith for Exiles, did a big study. One of the about 5 ways for the next generation to follow Jesus in digital Babylon. One of their key findings for this context that I want you guys to hear is that what they found is oftentimes the breakdown between intergenerational exchange is actually more at the feet of the older generation. You all probably grew up with the theme, don't trust anyone over 30, right? Did you guys grow up with that? Is that familiar to you? You have carried the baggage of that ideology and that zeitgeist from your generation into being nervous that the next generation doesn't think that you have anything of value to say to them. There's more hunger among the next generation for the wisdom of older generation than there is willingness from older generations to share wisdom with the next generation. So these tech companies are filling a void. They've moved in where this sociological gap has happened because of the realities of the particular revolution around the 60s and the 70s and the breakdown of trust of authority at that point. But today, this video is what I want to share to highlight it. There's actually a yearning for something outside of the algorithms to be passed down. Hopefully this works.
I think our parents were right, it was the damn phones. We laughed when we were children, hearing it's that Snapgram and Insta-chat and Face Talk. They didn't understand, they couldn't even say it right. We thought we knew better than them. They didn't know what it was like having the world at the tip of our fingertips. We scroll through the trash so much we have headlines tattooed on our skin, wires for veins, AI for a brain, and they may not have understood that they were right. It is the damn phones. A drug in my pocket depended on stimulation, but can we blame us? We were but children when they were given. We didn't know how to stop it. If I added up all the hours I spent on the screen, existential dread and regret would creep in, so I ignored this fact by typing away. And it's not like I can throw away my phone, it's how we communicate, it's how we relate, it's the medicine that is surely making our souls die. I used to say I was born in the wrong generation, but I was mistaken, for do I not do everything I say I hate? When I look in the mirror, I see a ghost staring back. I try not to think too much about who I would be without technology. The character behind my phone screen has become self-aware. Almost worse than being naive, for I know it's poison, but I drink anyways. We used to be scared of robots gaining consciousness, allowed by the media companies to distract us, as to not ourselves become conscious of the mess they created. We are the robots, we are the product, so I sit and I scroll and I rot and repeat. Sit and scroll and rot until my own thoughts are just being fed to me on TV, until my own feelings are wrapped up in celebrities, until my body is a tool of my political identity, and so I sit and I scroll and I rot. And so I post on the internet how the internet has failed us so that I may not fail my internet presence. I think our parents were right. It was the damn phones.
So I share that just to highlight that's a viral video. There's a real shift. Wettig.
Is that real?
That's a poem that she wrote and shared.
Oh, I see.
It's a poem that she wrote and shared, yeah.
Okay.
And that has gone viral. And it indicates that there is a real tide shift. And I've seen this within my own kids, and we're going to have time now to discuss this together. But is and Jonathan Haidt shows this in his book, Anxious Generation, that around the time of the pandemic, before that, young people thought of these as a real gift and something to protect and to treasure. But increasingly they recognize there's a huge amount of toxicity in this, and they're looking for guidance for how to find healthy digital habits and wisdom for navigating this stuff. And I've seen that even, again, just within my own kids. And so this is, so how do we help move from this to something that looks a little bit more like this? With Slack and with KruCon, we are trying to create context for intergenerational conversations on faith and culture topics. And I put on the table, there's 4 of these, I think, per table. There's more if people want them. We're in the middle of doing this right now with about 6 churches. We thought we were hoping to have 50 to 60 people participate. We had 88 people sign up from Hispanic churches and Anglo churches. That's about 45 to 50 youth and their parents or their mentors. They're there and they're bringing energy and they're hungry for it. So this is just one way that we are trying to invite the next generation into a good adventure. I think, once again, I want to name that the Father's voice is still calling to people to come to be a part of his home, right? And so how do we create context where biblical wisdom, right, the Word of God, can help young people navigate the voices of that digital Babylon, right? That this can lay a foundation that they can build on even amidst the digital revolution. And once again, I think I didn't leave enough time to watch the video. So it's, if you're interested, it's right on the back of this. So I want to make sure we have time for discussion.
Well,
Oh yeah, put up the questions. So the questions, these are the questions I'm suggesting for conversation.
Yeah.
New to this space. We introduce ourselves briefly. I'm Kevin Gertson, pastor at Smithvale in Waynesboro.
I'm Jim Pastor.
I am Stan Mason, who also
Harold Miller.
Which one?
Yeah. Yeah, this question, because I've always had these deep thoughts. I'm just thinking from the time I was graduating till now. And really, I think it is not shying away from the difficult questions, and not just assuming, like asking somebody where they are, not just assuming that they're in the place that you think they're in. Because and asking the right types of questions that takes time, which is what this digital age has stolen from us. It evaporates our time and therefore our attention.
How are you doing?
What's your biggest desire? Yeah. What do you want to? What is life to you? What is happiness to you? And getting at some of the root things that causes and motivates people to act and abide.
So challenging younger people to think about ideology that they give themselves.
Right. Well, and I think too, when you ask questions that they're not usually asked, that will spark something in them to draw their attention to your question. That's what happened to me in college with history. I wasn't being asked the right questions in high school, but in college they started Yeah, there was actually a man. I remember I was sitting in the doctor's office waiting, and this older man, and I was on my phone, and he started talking to me, and I was actually surprised. I was like, I should probably talk to this guy. He really wanted to know all about me, and I got to know about him. And I guess that's how conversations used to work. Like, oh, this is what the human.
Although realistically, I don't know, the waiting room it necessarily did work that way in waiting rooms. We just pick.
Yeah.
It used to be we pick up a magazine and kind of stay around. But yes, in general, that is how life works. Conversation with people, with neighbors, and with. We've always done it. Yeah.
But now it's so easy to be distracted.
Don't have that. They certainly do see great strength in all of them. Yes. When you're talking about it, I used to do service silence and solitude per week with drink just and silence and solitude. So we spent time in a place where there was no cell phone, no internet, nothing. And I put on the good scripts like after time it says just sit and think, right? And if we get into that week
When they got so
they can probably talk that in a different way. And I would go, you guys,
I mean, I experienced that with video games, where I was very addicted to video games, and like days would go, and I would be like, what have I done? What have I accomplished? And because the thing is like it tricks your mind and you think that you're progressing, like you actually are on a journey, right, and but then that adventure, what does that instill in you? It doesn't. I mean, it's nothing. And so around 2018, when I heard video games down the road, I started going out with nature, and it was just like this whole new experience. And then I started to like learn things and like do things that like build things, and so then I started using technology to do things in the real world instead of in this virtual world, and I could have something that I actually did. And so I think too, encouraging children like, hey, what do you think you're gaining from this? I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think as a kid. I don't know how much I would have been like, oh, well, I don't really care what I'm gaining or not gaining.
I want to have fun.
Right. Yeah. Just want to have fun. All my friends do it.
Is that question still?
the church, what we do speak of that, and let's put state and Nick, she talked about this in the video too. This is how we do it. We've been around years old.
Fear of missing out.
And it's how they do it. They use something.
But they have to wonder, I mean, if it is like a should we do
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. I thought we could open up for some sharing time for the tables. Kurt's going to go around with the microphone, and then we'll have David come up, and he'll lead us in the closing song, which will be number 162 in the Perfect Hymn. So, what have you to share from your table conversation?
One of the things I share with the group here is work with the students at different schools in Shenandoah and Harrisonburg. Well, one of the things very difficult is to communicate with the students, right? So, on my experience, I never go and tell them what to do. But I ask them questions and help them to process options that they may have. Like for instance, I never told my students or the students I work with as a mentor or behavioral specialist, you have to study, go and study more. Instead of saying that, I ask, how about if you study more? What do you think is going to happen? How about if you respond this different way, like this morning that you were expelled? Do you think that you have the different results? So just to help them to process about how they respond to things, about options that they may have. So. In the same way at the church,
one of the things that spoke to me was, when the prodigal son left home, his AI became the environment that he was living into, the life that he had, and all the input that he had from everyone around him. But he had no way to connect to his father. He had to literally go back home to see him. So, this is a two-edged sword. AI is always available to people who have internet connectivity, and you have internet connectivity wherever you go. So it's always going to be there. There's always going to be the things that, as he said, draw us into unhealthy living. But that same device does have connectivity back to your home. And so how do we reach them in such a way so the connection to home is what they give priority to? That's the question that I have. I don't know if any of you have thoughts on that, but I'd be interested in hearing.
In light of that, we have this technology right in front of us, all of us. We have children, grandchildren, neighbors, friends, people we can connect with, and we can use that for good. We talk about how bad it can be, but it can be used for good. Let's do it. Let's connect with these people. This is what about half this battle is. They're looking for authority figure. They're looking for connection. They're looking for advice, but not, you have to do this type of thing. But when you create the connection, when you make the communication, then you have the basis, the authority to really connect with them.
I'll try to lighten the mood so it's not all doom and gloom. I don't say this to make anyone proud, but just as an encouragement, is about a year ago, me and my family came back to the Mennonite church. We were more into the non-denominational Baptist side of things. And one of the main reasons is because we have 7, 8, and 1-year-old child, and they weren't being surrounded by the non-denominational church like they are in the Mennonite community. And that's one thing that the Mennonites, I feel like, do a really good job of, is have that intentional, close-knit community, whether it be within a single congregation or as Mennonites as a whole. And so we've noticed that greatly coming to Weavers is the kids are surrounded by lots of love. They're brought up, and they have access to more than just Sunday morning by themselves without their parents. They're invited into the worship time. They have Wednesday activities after school. We have potlucks, we have hymn sings, we have barn gatherings. So we have all these opportunities to build that community, and our kids are seeing that. And so I think in some aspects we are doing a good job. I'm sure there's always room to grow in that. Just a little encouragement.
Okay, one more comment and then we'll close.
I just really appreciated the way he framed one question, and he didn't make a lot out of it, and our discussion didn't really go that direction, but thinking about what other adventure can we call youth into so that they're not drawn so much by this. And you see it with kids still today. I mean, the kid that loves baseball, he goes through the whole baseball game without his phone. He's all in when it's baseball. There's an adventure there. He loves that, being a part of the team and the excitement of the game and everything else. And he set his phone aside for practice and games and whatever else. But are we calling them in the church into an adventure? And I think that's why I'm so impressed with Slack is, Ken's calling these kids into an adventure, and it's something grand, and they want to do it, and they want to be a part of it, and so I think that's where we need to focus. I mean, we can focus on how do we get rid of the drug that is social media and their phones, or we can focus on what can we call them into that will make it so that's less appealing.
All right, David.
162.
Yeah, stand up, everybody. When we're singing together, we're not on social media. Try it with your family. Let's sing verse 1 in unison. When you hit the refrain, harmony for the rest of the song. One.
The love of God is greater far than tongue or pen can ever tell. It goes beyond the highest star and reaches to the lowest hell. The one is God, his earthly Son, by God's beloved Son. The aching soul again made whole, and Christ has pardoned.
Harmony!
Oh, love of God, how rich and pure, how measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure, the saints and angels' song. When ancient times shall pass away, and human thrones and kingdoms fall, when those who hear refuse to pray, on rocks and hills and mountains fall, God's love so sure shall still endure, all measureless and strong. Grace will resound the whole ground, the saints and angels' song. Oh, love of God, how rich and pure, how measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure, the saints and angels' song. Could we within the ocean fill, and were the skies of parchment made, were every star on earth a quill, and every one a scribe by trade, to write the law of God above, would drain the ocean dry, nor will the scroll contain the whole, no stretch from sky to sky. Oh, love of God, how rich and pure, how measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure, the saints and angels' song.
Thank you very much. If you could bring the hymnals to the front here, then we'll put them back in the pews. And if anyone can help with putting the tables and chairs away, that would be appreciated. Go in peace. Blessings.